Chapter 9. A loud hammering sound could be heard in the early morning, but it didn't bother the two rangers who were patrolling the school ground one bit. Perhaps it was because someone was doing something totally right. That was enshrining the image of His Majesty the King on an elevated place. Ken chose the smallest nails so the old wood that had been used for years wouldn't crack. He hammered them gently until the nails went halfway into the wood and dusted off the coated paper that had been put on the back of the bookshelf for a long time. Two slender hands carefully placed the calendar on the nails. He backed away to look at his work, brown eyes staring at the printed paper before his eyes, pondering. It was an image of the royal father who was cordially greeting elderly men and women who had waited to welcome him ar- in a remote outback. The message was clear that no matter how far his people were, they were always in the eyes of this great father. The volunteer teacher who decided to come here with an ulterior motive took in a deep breath. He started feeling guilty for his own selfish reasons. He wasn't doing this for anyone but himself.
This is my dad's shirt.
Ian turned towards the girl when he heard the familiar tiny voice. The girl with red cheeks smiled widely as she tugged at the hem of an Akha shirt he was wearing.
Can you pass my thanks to him? My mom asked my dad and he said yes. She made this shirt just for him.
Miju giggled, remembering the war that broke out in her house a few days ago when her mom asked for his favorite precious shirt that he'd wear only once in a while and gave it to the new teacher to thank him for helping them out.
Can you tell him I'm sorry?
He smiled sweetly as he remembered the story.
Is Ayi coming to the class today? He's on his way. Dad's back is fine now. Mom said he had to come to the classes so no one can cheat and take advantage of him.
Ian nodded at the girl's innocent words. He had made up his mind that he'd teach them practical knowledge that they could apply in everyday life. A remote village like this didn't need a tutoring school, but a school of life. After finishing their morning national anthem singing, the students, whose number grew bigger than the previous week, thronged into the classroom that was a simple bamboo room. Ken used chalk to write a popular weight measurement table with different units on the blackboard, with a picture of a scale and small lines indicating numbers for the students to learn. Half a day later, he went over the lesson again to check how much the kids understood. He erased the writings on the blackboard with the tips of his fingers and drew a new scale over it.
If the handle points at this line, what does it mean?
The Akka pupils looked at the written numbers and raised their hands to count the fingers as they had been taught.
8 times mean 800 grams. What if someone tells you that this is 500 grams? How many grams are missing? 300 grams!
Ken smiled, pleased that his teaching was working.
That's it for now. You may have a lunch break.
The children cheered up hearing the words, took out their lunch pack in banana leaves and banana rope, and went to eat outside the classroom. The teacher himself brought out the lunchbox that he'd gotten from Kama Bingle in the morning. The simple food like an omelette, chili paste, and soft boiled vegetables that had gone cold was still delicious when one was hungry. The city boy sat down to eat on a wooden porch that was added from the classroom and looked at his students running around and playing at the flagpole. As he leaned back in the breeze, waiting for the food to digest and almost nodded off, sudden havoc broke out among the hill tribe kids. Ken jolted out of his drowsiness, hearing the loud shouts as they were speaking to each other. He got up to his feet and walked up to the children who were running after a moving object in the middle of the sky. The shouts in native and Thai dialects became clamorous, Someone who caught the word giant bird. Ken raised his hand to shield his eyes from the sun as he looked out. The school was on a high cliff, so they were seeing clearly what was flying above in the clouds.
That's an airplane.
He laughed, putting two hands next to his mouth, and tried to tell the children, who were shouting with excitement while sticking their arms out to mimic the plane wings and glide left and right. Once they became tired from playing, the new teacher taught them how to make paper airplanes in the afternoon and let them have a plane throwing competition. They were as smart as city kids. Once they knew how to glide their paper planes, they started modifying the toys, from slightly bending the tips of the wings and folding the head to make the plane go further than that of their peers. Too bad it was too windy on the cliff. When they threw the paper plane, the toys were knocked by the wind and hit the ground. The game became picking up the planes from the ground, and the kids soon lost their interest. Ken called them back to the classroom to resume the lesson. As he was teaching them easy English vocabulary, he started to notice that the children was crestfallen.
Do you love the airplane that much?
The kids looked at each other. It was Ai who spoke up. We want to fly in the sky.
It takes time to learn how to become a pilot, and it's very hard.
Yen answered, but judging from the innocent looks on their faces, he knew they didn't understand that complicated explanation. He pressed his lips, feeling tight in his chest at the expectation from the students.
How about this? Even if you can't fly the plane, there's something we can fly right now. What is it, Pitien?
A big smile split across the city boy's face. His eyes almost became foxy.
Not gonna tell you now. I'll reveal the secret tomorrow.
A loud protesting cry came up in unison as the kids didn't get their answer. The class was dismissed earlier and he went straight to Kama Bingle's house. As he waited on a little under the house, the person he had come to see was walking back from the farm. The village chief took off his weaving hat and brushed off the dust on his ties before greeting the visitor. Tian immediately got up and paced towards the elderly man.
I wanna ask you something. How can I get into the city right now?
You have to walk to the main road and wait for the minibus. But you'll reach downhill by evening. What do you need?
I want the internet.
He changed the word, seeing the puzzled look on Kama's face.
I meant, I want to look up something and find some tools for the kids. It's for tomorrow's class. I've promised I'll teach them how to make a kite.
A kite? What's got into you this time?
I saw how they got so excited seeing the airplane, so I think it'd be nice if they can make something that flies.
Kama Bingle pondered for a moment. I'll read you the base.
Why do you have to tell them? I'm not a prisoner on parole.
Tian frowned and it made the village chief laugh. You're not our prisoner, but you're under the responsibility of Captain Pupa. He just had a fight with Master Sakta, remember? You'd better watch your back. He understood the last part, but the first part? He acted nauseated. Since when had he become a responsibility of that big towering officer? The volunteer teacher came up to wait on the second floor of Kama's house. His eyes went wide as soon as he saw the equipment. A box with two antennae and a shoulder strap.
This is a military field radio.
He saw it once on the two rangers back who were patrolling the village. Yes, the base gave it to me in case of emergency.
Is my errand one of the emergencies?
Bingley smiled, not taking offense at the tease from someone as young as his son. You are an emergency to the captain, not to us. Dan shut his mouth, hearing the words as if someone had turned off a switch and didn't utter any more words. He glanced and saw how the elderly man was nimbly turning on the radio. Perhaps it was because Kama had been a recruit for 2 years. He turned the knob to the preset frequency and spoke into the handheld radio. Rain 1 to star 3, copy. Soon a voice spoke up following the white noise. Star 3 to Eagle. Rutien wants to go downhill right now. Rain 1, copy. We'll tell Eagle. We'll get back with the answer. The radio went off. Being led turned and jumped a little, seeing how the younger man on the floor was staring at the radio with bright eyes. You like the field radio? I do. I think it's super cool. I want to cut it up to see the insides. He could tell that his old inventive self had come back to life again in the past few days, after he'd suffered and nearly gone mad with years of having myocarditis. You can cut one up, but not this one. I don't want to pay you a jail visit. Bing Le answered humorously. Then a voice came from the radio. Eagle to star 3. Copy. It wasn't hard to recognize that deep, low voice. Star 3. Copy. Eagle is on duty. Will send pigeon. End of communication. Yan scratched his neck, not knowing who the codes referred to. I guess Eagle is Captain Pupa, but who is Pigeon? It's Dr. Wasan. The younger man nodded, but deep down he felt as if someone had prodded a stick into his mind and stirred up the sediments of frustration. It was always Dr. Nam who the captain relied on. He hoped both of them weren't being more than good friends. Otherwise, otherwise what? Yen stopped his thought and rubbed his face to chase away the silly thoughts. Yet it didn't help diminish his simmering anxiety one bit. Dr. Wasan, who had volunteered to take the teacher to the city, was calling outside the small hut. Ken jammed the long dead mobile phone that was connected to the charging cable, a notebook, and the pen into his backpack and showed up at the door. I'm ready, let's get going. Wasan saw the city boy in local clothes with a modern backpack coming down the stairs, and he let out a loud laugh. Are you going in this costume? Ken looked down at himself and shrugged. Yep, I'm going like this. It's rad. Actually, he was in a hurry. If it took too much time, he was afraid all the stationery shops would be closed by the time they reached the city. I like it. You look adorable. The young doctor suppressed his giggles and patted on a slim shoulder to usher Tien towards the military jeep that waited on the main road. The view of the mountain dusk was picturesque, combining with the cool temperature of the beginning of winter. It felt as if they were driving in Europe. Yet the young man in the car didn't appreciate the view. He was digging his nails in the seat, almost ripping the leather off, as the vehicle reached a bend without a barrier. A slight miscalculated turn of the steering wheel and they could have ended up in the pit of the cliff. Tian raised a hand to wipe off a clear sweat on his forehead. He used to be called a drug racer, and yet he wasn't close to the doctor who maneuvered the car as if he was an F1 driver. Bro, Doctor, can you please slow down? Aren't you in a hurry? He slammed the gear quickly and sharply turned the steering wheel to cut in front of the nearest truck. The passenger swallowed thickly. I'm in a hurry to get downhill, not to hell. Don't worry, I have a good talisman with me.
It's for longevity.
Hosan winked humorously at the younger man, who was grimacing as if he had just swallowed a rat's poison. He wasn't joking when he said he was scared. The jeep, with a military emblem on the flank, took a little more than an hour to reach downtown Shanghai from the usual 2 hours period in one piece. Tian let out a long sigh of relief. He had been bestowed one miracle after surviving the surgery, and he had no intention to visit hell anytime soon.
We're heading to the market. There are a lot of internet shops there.
The driver said as they stopped at the traffic light.
Okay, and do you have anywhere else to go?
The man looked partially Chinese, giving a knowing grin.
You don't want me to know your secret too, do you?
I don't have any secret. He was telling the truth. He didn't have a secret, but many secrets. The doctor clicked his tongue.
You do have that secret.
He turned and stared into the beautiful almond eyes.
The secret of the heart.
Ken was stunned as his brain tried to process the words. The smooth face started to twist as if he had just heard the most ruthless statement.
Did they teach you nauseating semantics in the cadet? The captain's just as bad.
He swore he barely whispered the last part, but it didn't escape the doctor's ears.
There you go. What kind of sap did the captain tell you? I can assure you, though, that the guy never said such a thing to anyone before.
The doctor's tone was playful, but it wasn't funny to Tien.
What do you mean?
The soft, deep voice sounded so serious that the doctor stopped making fun of the situation. He was smart enough to know that some lines weren't meant to be crossed. The matter of the heart belonged to two people and no one else. If his reserved friend didn't want the younger man to find out, he shouldn't be the one giving away that guarded secret.
Nothing. It was just some jokes.
Tien didn't want to probe, so he looked out the car, sitting still and quiet for a few minutes before saying something again.
I thought you and the captain are
He stuttered.
boyfriends.
The big jeep came to a sudden halt, and Tien nearly knocked his head on the dashboard. A loud, angry honk came from the car behind and prompted the doctor to switch a gear.
Are you kidding me?
Osant asked, feeling awkward. The city boy in Akha clothes looked down and mumbled.
No, I'm not. Should I give you an honest, serious answer?
That'd be nice. The answer came out even softer. The military doctor straightened up behind the wheel, letting out a long sigh.
I have a girlfriend. We're getting married next year.
Uh, girlfriend?
Yes, a girl. And a pretty one, too. She's a doctor at the Children's Hospital in Bangkok.
This man, the captain is broken-hearted. Osant wanted to laugh, but he held it back.
Are you feeling sorry for him?
The light brown eyes looked up at the doctor and quickly looked away, like someone with a guilty conscience. No, I just. He swore he wanted to scream the word no, but the word got stuck in his throat.
Alright,
The doctor took pity on on the younger man.
you don't have to tell me if you can't figure it out just yet. I assure you that what's going on between Pooh and I is a close friendship, but it's not that close. I swear on my life.
He couldn't help injecting an innuendo. The whole ride fell into silence until they reached the city with crowded commuters. Wasant turned the key to kill the engine and called at the younger man who looked outside the window with an absent-minded look on his face.
Yan.
The younger man turned at him with the face of someone who just came out of a reverie. Yes? Are you repulsed by a big man like Pooh?
Ian went silent for a second as if he was trying to form an answer. Repulsed? In what way?
In the same way that you thought Pooh and I were an item.
The doctor's smile was so honest, the most sincere one since they had become acquainted, that it made him nervous. As someone I know, I'm not repulsed by him. But other than that, I truly don't know. That was the right answer for now. Ken moved as if to get out of the car, but he stopped and said something without looking at the doctor. I'm sorry that I've started it in the first place. You can forget about it. This wasn't a topic men should discuss, he thought and jumped out of the car, brushing the hair from his face as confusion warred in his mind. Hosan followed suit and shouted after the young man. Meet me at the car in an hour. I'm taking you to the stationery shop. Even if the lean form was walking away without any responses, the doctor was certain Tien had heard his words. He didn't know if his insinuation was too strong. Hosan pinched his throbbing temples from meddling with someone else's love life. His soldier friend was more humble than people took him for. Pupa knew his own sexual preference, but he was carrying the weight of immense guilt towards his deceased parents. That was why he retreated from the city light and all the temptations to take a vow to serve his country at the border as a bachelor until his last breath. He didn't think it was the right call. The fair, smooth flesh of a deer was handed to him like a gift from heaven, and the hibernating tiger shouldn't have to watch from afar while salivating until his body ran dry. If the end didn't feel the same, it'd be a sting, but nothing fatal. But if the boy reciprocated, then two hearts would merge as one. Tien walked ahead, paying no attention to his surroundings, until he found a game shop in a commercial building that provided internet service. He went inside and the teen boy behind the screen looked right up, seeing a new customer. He looked at the man from head to toe, taking in his jungle appearance and the shot at taunting question.
What heel did you just get from?
He asked not too quietly and that drew giggles from the men and women in the shop. This was the first time Tian felt disdain from being looked down on because of who he was. If it was in the past, he would have brought his gang to set up the shop on fire, then slap his wad of cash to shut everyone up. But now he realized that would be useless. That kind of action brought nothing but the loss of money. Thin lips cocked up in a faint smile, he leaned over the counter where the teen sat. The same hill your dad crawled down from. Watch what came out of your mouth, asshole. The chilling, low tone that sent a chill down the boy's spine didn't match the vehement words, but it did work.
How can I help you, big bro?
I'm here to use the internet. Ken put on the, ch- the gangster hat just the way he was good at and gave the teen another intimidating command. I want to recharge my phone as well.
Please, our place is your home. You can have a seat anywhere you want. The plug is under the computer desk.
The teen stuttered as he tried to please the new customer like a man who feared for his life.
Thanks, bro.
The city boy in the heel stripe costume turned to look at the computer desks, realizing that all eyes were on him from behind the screen, so he shouted. What the fuck are you looking at? Am I naked and you want to see my dick or something? Silence fell in the shop. Yen smiled, pleased, and looked for a quiet corner to take care of his business. The Hill Tribe imposter bent down under the table and plugged in his charging cable to the socket. A few minutes later, the expensive cell phone came to life again. He punched a number of a friend who knew about his whereabouts
and typed how to make a kite as he waited for the other person to answer. The phone rang for a while before someone picked up.
Ian, you bastard!
The son of a former influential military officer pulled the phone away from his ears and shot a retort.
Motherfucker! No need to shout! My eardrums are ringing! What the fuck, man? Where the freaking hell have you been for the past 2 weeks? I couldn't reach you. Thought you were murdered by some illegal workers.
It was only 2 weeks since he ran away. Why did it feel like a lifetime?
There's no signal on the mountains. I just came down to the city.
Ken replied.
Tell me something. Are you doing some method acting being a volunteer teacher on the hill? I, I gave it 3 days before you ran back home.
Fool was right. He had wanted to pack his bag and leave the first night. Yet, when he had made up his mind to stick through it, he realized that it wasn't that bad and he had been showered with kindness from the villagers.
I'm fine. I'll make it.
He then cut to the chase.
I'm calling you to ask about the situation back home. Something's not right. If I went out for a few hours, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. No, I've been gone for 2 weeks and I left only one letter to explain everything. I don't really think mom and dad would be such understanding. You think a big boss like your dad wouldn't be able to find you?
The conspirator asked.
Of course he would. That's why I think it's weird no one's trying to track me down and bringing me back. That means the reason you're here was that your dad let it happen.
His friend sounded so certain with his statement.
Did my dad's men get to you? What? No.
Phil's usual deep voice shut up a few notes and Tian frowned.
Are you sure?
Hearing that question, Phil's voice rose even higher.
Why are you asking me this? No one is following you. Isn't that what you wanted? What else do you want? Nothing. Okay then. I have something to look up on Google.
Before he could hang up, his friend went on.
What the fuck is that something? Maybe I can help you. I'm free and bored.
Tian chuckled.
I'm going to teach the Hill Tribe kids how to play the kite.
Play the kite is Thai slang for men's masturbation due to the hand movements.
You want to help me with that? You meant masturbating? You evil son of a bitch. Yeah, right. I'm an evil son of a bitch. I'm going to teach them how to pull a chula kite, snake kite, and they'll learn how to fly so high to reach the heaven.
His Bangkok friend was shouting curses into the line after realizing he was being played with the innuendo and hung up. The city boy sniggered, feeling happy that he was able to let out some steam. He moved the mouse around and looked for the materials to make the kites and how to make them. He then wrote everything down in his notebook. As the meetup time neared, Ken grabbed his belongings and paid for the internet at the counter near the entrance. The teen boy who managed the shop almost gave him one free hour. He then rushed back to the parking spot where Dr. Vasant was waiting. The dedicated teacher tried with the materials that Dr. Nam had paid for. He made a simple kite with the instruction he jotted down from a website, using only a kite paper, latex glue, and one hemp rope. Making the kite itself, he used branches from around the hut and sharpened them to build a structure. Bamboo would be a better choice due to its lighter weight. He played around with it until late before he got pleased with his own creation and passed out until the sun came up at dawn. He got up so late that he could only brush his teeth and patted himself with cold water. After putting on the clothes, Tien darted from the hut with 2 arms full of kite-making tools and headed towards the school. When he reached there, the students had already sung the national anthem and sat down in their places in the classroom. He came to a halt seeing the tall officer in the greenish khaki t-shirt with his camouflage pants, and the two rangers were carrying bamboo stalks and putting them at the doorstep. Captain Pupa looked up and met with the questioning eyes. Why are you looking at me like that? Don't you need these bamboos? We're going to sharpen them for you.
I'm not saying anything.
Yen barked the answer and slammed his tools on the table. What he had discussed the day before with the doctor still bothered him. Even if the captain and the doctor weren't lovers, it didn't mean the captain would have any romantic feelings towards him. The city boy shrugged and walked into the small classroom, ignoring the taller man who was staring at him. The captain's eyes followed the younger man, who refrained from his usual retort that it was unusual. Toussaint had this knowing smile on his face when he returned from the city with Yen, not letting out a single word. He had wondered if that blabbermouth had spilled anything he shouldn't have. The young captain shook his head in exasperation. He told the two rangers to start cutting the bamboos with machetes quietly. As they sharpened the bamboo to make thin, small splints, the captain listened to Tien's deep voice, giving the lesson, as the children tried to be the first one who gave the correct answer. It's incredible, isn't it? One of the rangers who had seen the new volunteer teacher at the welcoming ceremony spoke up. I didn't think he was going to last. Pupa cocked his eyebrow. And now? I think he'll stay for a while. The captain went silent for a moment and smiled. Even if he wanted to, he couldn't. He has a brighter future ahead of him and shouldn't be kept up here. I agree. He's still so young. That's true. He doesn't even graduate from the university yet. Pupa said that as a reminder to himself. What a shame. The kids in the locals seem to like him. The captain didn't say anything but went on using his Swiss pocket knife to sharpen this and smoothen the bamboo. During the lunch break, he gave the food in a tiffin carrier to the teacher. It was just a simple dish: boiled eggs in a sweet brown sauce that was left over from the dinner the day before, with fried pork and garlic. Ken, who sat down for the meal, used his spoon to scoop up the darkened, dried egg and made a face. Are you sure I can eat this? It looked like a painted egg. You don't know what you're saying. This color means the egg is delicious and it was done just right. A ranger laughed. I'm going to buy that. He was starving from not having any food since morning. Even if it was eggs boiled in benzene, he would have swallowed it down. Yen put the rice into his mouth and chewed, feeling content for not having to watch his manner. Have you ever made a kite before? Pupa asked out of curiosity and got a glare as an answer. I studied in an international school, so this is the first time I ever saw a kite paper, Yen said flatly as he gulped down the whole bottle of water after he finished his lunch. The thick, dark eyebrows knitted. How are you going to teach the kids then? It's not that complicated. I made one last night and it looked like a kite. And you know how to fly it? The captain started to sweat, seeing an impending doom. I watched it on YouTube. You just keep running and the wind will take the kite up itself. The captain wanted to pinch his temples hearing the answer. So, you've never flown a kite before? Nope, the thin lips sneered. But I do fly another type of kite, the one under my pants. Pupa pulled a wry face. He straightened and leaned over to the man who sat cross-legged next to him. Smart ass. Are you up for a kite challenge with me? Once the hidden meaning sank in, Tian's smooth cheeks reddened and he bolted. He wasn't embarrassed about the sexual innuendo, but he was shaken by how close that tan face was leaning in.
I I'm going to prepare the kite.
He ran away, followed with loud laughs from the three soldiers that seemed to mock him. When the clock struck 1 p.m., the Akka children ran back into the classroom to hear what they were going to do today. Ken, in the local hand-woven costume, was scribbling on the blackboard the first picture that appeared to look like a cross with connected lines. The new volunteer teacher turned around and smiled at his students.
We're going to make a kite. What is a kite?
The children asked loudly.
Something that flies.
The teacher didn't know how to explain it.
Let's get going and you'll find out.
He gave a vague answer and called everyone to sit down around him to explain how to make the kite. Ken put two 1 foot sharpened and thin bamboos together like a cross. He waited until everyone did the same, and the captain gave everyone a hemp rope to wrap around the interconnecting spot. Once it held the bamboos together tightly, Ken helped the kids string a rope at the four ends of the wood to make a structure. The volunteer teacher picked up the thick pile of colorful papers and put the simple kite structure on top of it. He measured that the paper was bigger than the structure and cut with a scissor. His reluctant assistants handed him latex glue and crouched down to help him put the structure and the paper together as the children watched with bright eyes, thrilled.
Apply just a thin layer of glue.
Yen said, giving the demonstration.
Why? I watched the instruction clip. They even used incense to burn the wood. Perhaps it has something to do with the kite weight. Glue makes it heavier. If you want to fly something in the air using the wind force, you have to make it as weightless as possible. If you put too much glue, the layers will add up and it's taking time to dry. This thin paper might even be too soggy to fly.
Pupa smiled gently. When the boy talked about something he was passionate about, he transformed into another person and wasn't acting out like he usually was. He could even see the determination in those brown eyes.
How can a heavy plane fly then?
A plane uses its wings to support all its weight. The wings were designed for that. When the wind hits the plane's upper curve, all the air quickly flows to the back of the wings. Yet the underside has a slower airflow, creating high air pressure that in turn creates a lifting force. But the lifting force can only be generated with the existing propulsion. The faster the propulsion towards the front is, the faster the air flows through the wings become, creating more lifting force. The plane's engine creates the lifting force. As for the kite, it's how we pull the rope as we're running and pull it upwards.
Yen frowned. He was speaking in layman's terms, but it came out even more confusing. Once he glanced at the other man, his nerve endings twitched.
You tricked me into talking, didn't you?
Why else would this monster give him a wide, cheeky grin as he was giving a drawn-out explanation? His eyes were so bright that Ken wanted to gouge them out and toss them around like some marble beads.
I did not.
The captain coughed, trying to hide the fact that the brat had caught him red-handed and even seen him smiling.
But it made someone happy, did it not?
Happy? What did he mean by happy? And who was the captain referring to? Did Pupa mean he was happy listening to him talk, or that it was him who was happy when he talked? Ken looked down and busied himself with folding the paper against the kite's structure without saying another word. They finished making many colorful kites. The last thing to do was to put some decorations on them. The teacher let the children cut the papers and used color pens to draw their kites as they pleased. As a final step, they wound the hemp rope around the core on both ends, then used short bamboo cylinders to wound the rope around it to be rope axles. He worked on his kite as he waited for the children to finish drawing, but he had something more complicated in his mind. The engineering student used criss-crossed bamboo beams, but the horizontal beam would be longer and thinner than the core axle. He wound them together with a rope and tied a knot on the tip of one wing before slightly bending it down. He pulled the rope tight at the other end and tied it to the tip of the core axle. He did the same to both tips of the wings.
That's the star-shaped kite?
Captain Pupa asked as he sat cross-legged next to the teacher.
You can tell just from the structure? Not bad.
Tian said something that couldn't be pinned down as a compliment or sarcasm.
I'm a hillbilly. These were my childhood toys, though. I've never made one myself.
The officer said as he put the bamboos to make a structure. Tian used orange paper to wrap around the structure and cut the yellow paper into stripes, then turned them into a tassel to decorate the wings. The textbook suggested that adding some weight would balance the star-shaped kite and help with maneuvering. He turned to look at the imposing officer who vanished, leaving only the finished kite on the spot he had been. It was just a plain white kite, simple and dull just like the man himself. All of a sudden something came to his mind. He looked left and right and once he saw no one was around to stop him, an evil grin appeared on his lips. Tian grabbed a red color pen nearby and started scribbling something on the captain's kite. He started with a facial shape with intense eyes and a wide grin with long fangs. He straightened back and suppressed his laugh, pleased with the drawing. He drew jagged lines around the top corners of the mouth and finished with a simple thigh crown at the top. Anyone who saw the drawing would be able to tell what it was. A Temple of Dawn demon. The young man grinned that his eyes squinted.
Nice drawing.
A deep, low voice spoke right into his ear.
Not gonna brag, but I always got an A in art classes. Whoa!
Tian jumped and skittered away after accepting the compliment with a smile. The captain stood with arms over his chest, right behind the teacher with a scowl on his face. Even the demon in the drawing paled in comparison.
How dare you draw on someone else's toy?
It's an artistic license. Art has no borders. The wall can be my canvas, and so can a kite.
That's lame.
Pupa shook his head, hearing the clumsy excuse, and pointed outside.
Go. The kids are lining up waiting for you. I'm taking you guys to the open yard on Papandao.
Okay.
Tian said, grabbing his bright star-shaped kite, and rushed outside. The captain, who pretended to be upset and intimidating, bent down to pick up the kite the young man had drawn. He looked at the long demonic fangs and let out a soft laugh. Should this rascal be smacked on the rear, or should it be on his lips? The parade of the volunteer teacher, the students, and the three rangers from the school on a 2-kilometer route led them to an open space on Papandao Cliff, the namesake of the village. The yard was surrounded by sparse, small shrubs and it was quite windy due to its higher elevation comparing to other hills. The city boy stood shaken from the freezing cold under the glaring sun, unlike his little pupils who were jovial because they had been accustomed to the weather. A ranger picked up dry a leaf and threw it up to see the wind's direction before reporting to his officer in command. Pupa walked back towards the teacher.
You run against the wind to make it fly.
He then paused and went on in a lower tone.
Wait a second. You've never flown a kite before.
I told you that I watched it on YouTube. You just throw the kite up and run. It's that simple.
The other man wanted to pinch his temples. How could this boy teach others how to play the game when he never had any hands-on experience.
I'll just explain it to you and the kids.
The captain told the children to pair up. One kid would hold an end of the rope and the other held the kite. Once they heard the signal to throw it up the air, they did so as the other ran off against the wind. As the kite gained a drag, the kid who was holding the rope should slowly release the length of the rope to allow the kite to sail, and constantly tugged it to make the kite stay afloat in the wind. The instruction was simple, but the action was a mess. The hill tribe children tumbled and fell as they tried to drag the kite on the ground, ruining their creations. Seeing how it went, Tian scratched his head, realizing that it was much more complicated than he had expected.
No one succeeds on the first try. After a trial and error, they'll make it.
Pupa's words sounded like a consolation to a man who invited the children in a game he had never tried himself. Can you just send a kite up for me? I have to find out some tempo as I run, the engineering student said, following his own conclusion. He handed the colorful star-shaped kite to the officer and held the bamboo tube with a rope around it in his hand. As they stood a good distance, Pupa started counting.
1, 2, 3, run!
He threw the kite up and Tian darted off, feeling the tug of the rope, and heard an order from the barracks officer in command.
Release the rope! Enough! Now run! Faster!
The city boy sprinted faster as he turned back to see his kite taking the wind. Still, the elevation was too low and the kite wobbled. Tiredness started creeping in because his heart wasn't functioning normally. As he slowed down, the bright kite also slowly fell to the ground.
Then, keep your arm high. Tug the rope and don't let the kite fall. It's going steady.
The teacher gritted his teeth and kept running, following the command. He lifted his arm to tug the hemp rope once in a while until the bright star-shaped kite was finally teasing the sunlight in the sky. Even if sweats were breaking on his forehead and back until his shirt was plastered against his back, they couldn't dim the bright smile on his smooth face. The childlike laughter coming from the younger man that sounded the same as the Akha kids around him sent an emotion that should have been buried in the deepest corner of Pupa's heart on fire. The officer vehemently shook his head, driving the feelings away, and stepped in to help the boy keep the kite afloat. He stood behind the smaller guy and took the rope, leaning slightly backward.
Have you ever played tug of war? If your opponents pull the rope to his end, you have to lean back to create resistance. But if they pull harder, you have to slowly release the hold. If you resist too hard, the rope might tear the kite apart.
The deep, soft voice in his ear made Tien's heart skip a beat, and it was even more exhausting than the run he had just done. Now I know why the kids can't make the kite fly, Tien said, feeling nervous from the officer's proximity. I have long legs, and I'm panting like a dog. They're short, tiny legs wouldn't be able to keep up.
Your kite is bigger than theirs, so it takes more of your energy.
Pupa pointed towards the rectangular kites in myriad colors that started taking wind from the help of the two rangers.
Those kites have a simple form, so they'll manage. See?
The almond eyes glanced back at the taller man who was embracing him from behind. The intimacy felt bizarre. You go and fly your demonic kite now. He gently brushed the other man off, but Pupa got a hint and released his arms. A few minutes later, the white star-shaped kite with colorful drawings was flying in the wind. It looked effortless, the way Pupa ran only a few paces and sent his kite afloat. It made Tian envious. You made me run like a dog. What the heck? It took you less than 5 meters to get it up. Tian glared at the officer and maneuvered his kite to get closer to Pupa's. The captain turned towards him and said in a deadpan note with a deadpan face,
It's my clandestine experience.
That made Tian want to send a knee up the captain's diaphragm.
Yeah, right. I'm just a city boy, a teenage one. How can I beat an upcountry man like you who grew up with this kind of toy?
Tian said, aiming at the captain's age.
Are you suggesting you know how old I am?
I'd be a half-witted to think you're in your 20s.
I'm not telling you then.
Pupa grinned as the rascal raised his chin in defiance as if he didn't care about the answer anyway. He leaned down to whisper into the younger man's ear.
You know what? I'm aging fine. I'm aging like a fine wine.
Tian whipped around and shouted, his cheeks red.
All I know is that the older you get, the more wrinkly you become.
He tugged the kite away and left the man with a ringing in his ears. The children were flying the kites, having the time of their lives. Some of them had ruined the toys, but they were sharing one with their friends. The clear blue sky on Papandao Hill was dotted with bright and colorful kites for the first time, as if they were beckoning a small airplane that was coming in and out of the clouds to play along.
Giant bird! Airplane!
The hill tribe children cried out with joy, using both old and new words, before darting off to follow the aircraft.
Don't go too far!
The teacher called because he had no energy left to follow. He raised his hand to shield the sunlight from glaring into his eyes and saw an airplane flying along with the children's small kites. Despite 1,000 feet distance as if they were a squadron, it was an unforgettable sight that was imprinted in his mind.
Is that from the Air Force?
Tian asked Pupa, surprised to see how the aircraft didn't look like a fighter and even flew sluggishly. The officer smiled gently with a warm glint in his eyes.
Not really. But if you really want to find out, you'll see in the next few hours.
He didn't have a chance to ask the next question when the children thronged back towards him as the giant bird had flown by the cliff and went away. It was late afternoon before they returned to the school. Yan gave his students English homework to memorize 10 words written on the blackboard, saying there would be a quiz the next day, and let them go home. He collected all the remaining materials in a bag in case he might need them again in the future, and turned to look at the kites the kids had made. Even if some of them were broken, some were still intact. He looked around the plain, colorless makeshift classroom made of woven bamboos and decided to sit cross-legged on the floor and started cutting the papers to fix the broken kites. The golden light of the sun started to dim. Captain Pupa, who had left to talk to Kama Bingle in the village, returned to the school to see how the younger man was doing, not seeing him at the hut. He saw a movement of a shadow inside the classroom and was about to call out. Yet what he witnessed made him speechless. The petulant young man had climbed on the desk to string a hemp rope of the bamboo beam above. All the kites made by his students, the paper birds, and the paper airplanes were punctured and hung from the ceiling and the window frames. They were swaying in the breeze, looking like mobiles. Pupa walked closer.
Is this also called art?
Ken turned around and cocked an eyebrow in surprise, seeing the officer at this hour. But it quickly shifted. He jumped down the desk and went outside to look at his work through the large open window frame. The beautiful face was painted with a smile. Such melancholic happiness this is.
This is my this is called my memory.
The word alone reminded Pupa of one inescapable truth. He forced himself to say something, despite all the numbness in his chest.
I'll show you another good memory.
The larger man spun and walked out without looking back. Yen ran after him, puzzled. On the cliff not far from the school, their shadows cast on the ground. The strong wind carried the scent of soggy soil to their nostrils, making Tien rub the tip of his nose to suppress the sneezes.
Look over there.
Pupa pointed to the other side of the mountain, far but was still visible. On higher ground, the vantage point became crystal clear. The sky started to darken, but one patch looked darker than the rest. Looking closer, Tian spotted a water wall enclosing the area, creating a frightful and yet beautiful sight of a natural wonder he'd never seen before. Are you saying that it's raining on just that spot? The officer slightly shook his head. Remember what you asked about the aircraft this noon? Does it have anything to do with the rain over there? That was an aircraft to make royal rain. Royal rain is an artificial rain and cloud seeding techniques developed by King Bhumibol under the Royal Rainmaking Initiative, Chaipatana Foundation official website. In winter, the northern part of Thailand always experiences drought due to severe logging. His Majesty King Bhumibol had originated this project to create irrigation and wildfire prevention. Pupa said, still looking straight ahead. His Majesty King Bhumibol is Bhumibol Adulyadej, conferred with the title King Bhumibol the Great in 1987. He was the ninth monarch of Thailand from the Chakri dynasty, titled Rama the Ninth. He was born on December 5th, 1927, and passed away on October 13th, 2016. The United Nations have designated December 5th as the World Soil Day to honor the king. I wanted to tell you that even if it doesn't rain all over Thailand, his compassion for us never goes awry. One day, when you leave this place, I want you to remember the good things that happened here. Always. The words didn't get into Tian's head, for he was transfixed by the handsome face that stared out into the open space. The determination to protect his motherland until his last breath in the captain's eyes made Tian's mind travel back to the photo that Crew Torfan had tugged in her diary. The first moment left a lasting impression on him and drove him to come here on this hill. The man from the city of light far away inhaled deeply as if he finally made up his mind. At this moment, he no longer cared how his relationship with the captain would turn out. Even if he couldn't be close to the man, he just wished he wouldn't be too far apart, so that every moment spent together from now on would become cherished memories always. End of chapter 9.